Welcome to Charts Today. It is Friday the 28th of August and we are heading into a long weekend in the UK. We saw a big jump in Nvidia yesterday, up nearly 9% on those results the day before. So really interesting, and we'll come back and look at that. But first of all, let's just take a look at what's going on in the broader market. So we start with the dollar. That is little changed, really. We've seen a little bit of recovery off that double bottom that we identified last week, and we are just steadily growing. But of course, that medium-term trend, we are below the cloud, and the long-term trend, we are also below the cloud. So dollar weakness is still something that we can think about longer term. If we look at Bitcoin, that has had an amazing couple of weeks, and we're seeing in the medium-term chart there, we're coming back to test this resistance level. We're looking at the short term. We paused, we had a run, and then we paused, and we are just pushing higher there as well. So that's quite interesting. The market yesterday generally was mixed. We had that performance from Nvidia. If we look at the chart on the short-term chart, we can see we're just climbing higher, and Nvidia being the largest constituent in the US will have a big impact there. But we have seen the broader market just struggling a little bit, so that's really quite key. The UK market is up this morning on the future, and the DAX in Germany also higher on the future. We're waiting for the main markets to open. Japan also pushing higher, as are most of the other markets as well. The interesting thing is what's happening in bonds. The Japanese bond market is still pushing higher there. That upside target to 3.5% will be very painful for Japan. It's looking like a triangle breakout and continuation with the trend. And all eyes will be on Jackson Hole in Wyoming this week with that meeting going on in the US. We are seeing US rates higher potentially. That move into the pattern sideways, a break higher, would then be a similar move as what we'd look for. So bonds still a concern. Coming back to what's going on in the broader markets, we're seeing Brent crude recovering this morning. European gas prices, I've written my gas report, excuse me, already, and we're seeing, this is 1 minute charts, short-term upside targets. European gas markets looking very strong, and UK gas also pushing higher. So that's having potential inflationary effects in Europe. Looking at some of the other products, sugar continues higher. We're seeing really big moves there, and that's really quite key. Looking at the daily chart, we've got a new upside target pushing even higher for sugar. And do watch the 1 minute targets if you're trading sugar. Gold, we talked about gold. This we're seeing here, we're holding above the cloud. The short-term chart there, excuse me, the short-term chart, we are seeing downside targets. So gold is just looking a little bit weaker. Silver on the short term up 1.4%. So there we are seeing a break of that range and 3 upside targets. So silver looking very bullish indeed on the short term. Looking at the semiconductor index, just short term, Nvidia will have helped there, of course, very large constituent. And SpaceX was also just a little bit higher. Looking at that daily chart, we can see we are really range bound at the moment, somewhere between 130 and 150. That's the range we have to wait for the break. We're seeing Apple up slightly. They're looking pretty strong still. Amazon gave up some ground, down 1.5%, and Microsoft, which has been a relatively poor performer, is starting to show signs of activating a new upside target, coming back. If we look at the daily chart there, we see that, and the long-term chart, we need to break to new highs really. This has been a really big range for Microsoft. So Nvidia, key thing on Nvidia is can we hold these gains? So that's the daily chart. And if you'd be forgiven for thinking Nvidia was the star performer in the Dow, but just take a look at Salesforce. Upside targets there, and we jumped 22% 2% yesterday. So that's a huge move. We did have the upside targets there, so that's really quite key. But back to Nvidia, what we're looking for here is similar price behavior as we identified with Merck, that had a 12% jump last week. If I can just find Merck in the list here, easy way to do that is just go to alphabetical and they'll show up. There we are, Merck. Um, and you can see we had this big jump, so similar as Nvidia, was up 12%. And what's happened since is what's really key. So that's what we're looking for with Nvidia. What's going to happen to those candles since then? And that's where the 1 minute chart is going to be really quite key. So watching these shorter term targets and can we hold those gains? That's going to be what we need to look for Nvidia. But all in all, we did see yesterday, despite Salesforce and Nvidia, we did see most stocks in the Dow were down. The bellwethers all been hit, and stocks like McDonald's, Disney, underperforming stocks, McDonald's breaking to new lows. Once you break to new lows, you see more new lows. So that's really quite key. And looking at Disney, this has been quite a good uptrend, mostly on takeover talk, but looking again, that trend is starting to look a little bit weaker. That's on the short-term chart. If we go to the daily chart, that's the recovery. We've hit resistance, so no big surprises there. Looking quickly at the Nasdaq, as I say, we're still waiting for the UK to open. And if we look at the performance yesterday, we had CrowdStrike, we've got Strategy, which have been very strong on the Bitcoin move, but boy, oh boy, there'd be a lot of pain in those investors. And we can see here there were quite a lot of stocks up 5% or more. Adobe, which has been an underperformer, starting to perform again with upside targets, breaking levels. That's really quite key. Do keep an eye on those trends and targets. That's going to be the really important thing. And have a great long weekend and see you on Tuesday. Bye for now.